Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Swami Jyotirmayananda Society, our journey to self realization. Please subscribe for the mystical meanings and to enjoy daily satsang. We are currently exploring the book The Mystery of the Soul, Katha Upanishad, commentaries by Swami Jyotirmayananda, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So, currently we are studying chapter 2, section 2, mantra number 15, where Lord Yama continues to guide his favorite disciple, 5-year-old Nachiketa. So, in order to perceive an object in the world, the mind flows through a sense channel and assumes the form of that object to become one with it, so to speak. The subtle veil that keeps the object separated from one's consciousness is broken by this externalized movement of the mind. So, the Vishayakara vritti, that means the mind that has assumed the form of the object, is illumined by the light of the self, thus giving rise to the experience I know this object, I like this object, I want this object, I'm not happy without this object. Does that make sense? What we have done is painted our mind with that. In English or in general terms, we say they are obsessed with it. That's what that means, that the mind has taken that shape and form. But the self cannot be realized through Vishayakara vritti, senses. The mind has to be still and calm and totally reflecting the image of the self. Because we are superimposing the worldly things, the light of the self gets diffused. So, in other words, it is impossible to know the self through the intellect, mind, and senses. How then should a person know the self? The self reveals itself by its own light. Swayam Prakashi, meaning the self is self effulgent. When you want to take an object out of a box in a dark room, you need to keep a lamp with you because you can't see without it. You open the lid of the box, see the object illumined by the lamp, and thus you are able to take it out. In the same way, while perceiving the objects of the world in the box of ignorance, you need a lamp, the reflected light of the self. You need to open the lid by the functions of the mind, and then the object is revealed by the light that proceeds from the self. When one thinks that he has perceived an object without the light of the self, it is due to his identification with the function of the mind which has assumed the form of the object. So, nothing happens without the self. It's the self that's giving the light to your ego, to your intellect, to your mind, to your senses, to the objects. But it happens so quickly that we don't see all that and we think, it's my mind or it's my intellect. But in the end, as we all know, the minute the self decides to depart, nothing works. Nothing works. The body is called dead. We have departed from this world. In the case of self realization, an aspirant withdraws his mind from the objects of the world by realizing fully that they are illusory, meaning unreal. Just as a still lake captures the reflection of the vast sky, so the intuitive mind flowing inwardly towards Brahman reflects the absolute. This results in the removal of the veil of ignorance. If you need to take a burning lamp out of a closed box in the darkness of the night, all that you need to do is open the box. The light will reveal itself automatically because it's in there. In the same way, when ignorance is removed, the self is revealed by its own light. It doesn't need any external source of light, it's light itself. But we have to remove the obstacles around it. That's what's creating darkness within us. The light of a candle flame is insignificant before the sun, but even the light of the sun is insignificant before the light of the self. The entire universe is illumined by a drop of light from the golden sun of the self. But since it's not visible to us, we say we can't see anything. But because we have created these obstacles over many lifetimes, and it is this light which is the center and source of all perceptions that arise at the physical plane of one's existence. The self is infinite existence, knowledge, and bliss. We call it Sat Chit Ananda. Satchitananda, existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. So that is our essential nature. We all want to know, we all want to exist, and we all have the fear of death. We all want bliss, happiness, joy. So thus ends the second section of the second chapter of the Katha Upanishad. So we will now move on to chapter 2 and the final section, chapter section 3, mantra number 1. With its roots above and branches below, this Ashwatha tree of the world process is apparently eternal. This tree is rooted in Brahman, who is absolutely pure. That Brahman is called nectar. Upon him all the worlds abide. No one can go beyond that Brahman. That is also known as the Ashwatha tree, the tree that is inverted upside down with the roots pointing towards the sky and the branches are downwards. This is very clearly explained in chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is also known as Purushottama Yoga. So these scriptures go hand in hand. If you want to go deeper into your spiritual study, you study the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, and then they all converge, they all bring the essential teachings out. But here, that is that the essence of that tree, showing the roots, meaning the roots are sustained by Brahman or God, just like a tree is sustained by its roots below. Ashwatha literally means um, that which does not last until tomorrow. This world process is like a tree. It is fundamentally rooted in Brahman, which is the absolute self. Its branches spread through the causal and astral bodies in the form of ignorance, desire, and karma. And the effect of these three, ignorance, desire, and actions, are the leaves and flowers of this tree. The fruits are the bitter and sweet experiences of pleasure and pain, which give rise to the seeds of future embodiments or birth and death, rebirth. Experiences of the objects of the world give rise to their impressions. These impressions are like seeds which give rise to future embodiments. They fructify. So, this process is beginningless and continues to flow on endlessly from a relative point of view. Therefore, it is apparently an eternal tree. No one can conceive of the termination of the world process in the terms of time and space. However, when a yogi attains the intuitive vision of the self, that is called prajna, the light of the self that floods you, and that is called self realization. So, till that journey, we must prod on, continue the effort. The veil of ignorance is removed and the tree is uprooted. Till then, the effort has to go on. All the planes of relative existence are sustained by Brahman. When the vision of duality is negated by the intuitional realization of the self, the entire world process consisting of all planes of relative existence is transcended. However, Brahman, the absolute, cannot be transcended by anything, since Brahman is the only reality. That is the significance of this mantra. Moving on to mantra number 2. All this world that has proceeded from Brahman functions in Brahman. Whoever knows that Brahman, who strikes fear in the hearts of the ignorant like an uplifted thunderbolt, attains immortality. So, fear arises out of duality, you and me. That's why I think somebody is stronger than me. I'm afraid of them because they can beat me up. That's the perception. But in eventually, this world is non-dual, singular. There's only one. Everything else is an appearance that results in multiplicity. So fire burns all that is other than fire, but cannot burn itself. It simply just calms down. In the same way, the self seems to destroy all that is non self. Neti, neti, not this, not this, not this. That's what sages and saints have to go through. But it cannot destroy itself. That self is the only universal. One entity, non dual, that is indivisible, perpetual, timeless, etc. So, I am different from the absolute self. So long the soul is whirled through repeated births and deaths in this world process, wherein Almighty God controls every development, as it were, with an uplifted thunderbolt in his hands. But when Brahman is realized by removing the veil of ignorance, the illusion of the world process is negated, even as a dream is negated by waking up. So, just like you wake up from your dream, no matter how real your dream felt, upon waking up, it becomes fake, unreal, a magic show, and you don't even give it any value. Much in the same way, when you are in this real world we call our walking state and waking up state, upon attaining self realization, this also becomes as real as your waking up experience from your dream. So, an imagined snake is negated when the underlying reality, a rope, is discovered. Once you know it's a rope, you were simply thinking it's a snake, isn't it? You, in semi darkness, the rope was coiled in such a way that it looked like a snake and you perceived it to be a snake. In reality, the snake was never there, it didn't exist. But the feeling, the looks of the rope made you assume that it's a snake. So, with the negation of illusion, all this is realized as the self. There is nothing but the rope only. Rope, rope, rope everywhere. No, no snake. But you may even fall down. You may have a heart attack. You may get scared. Everybody else may get scared because when you are thinking it's a snake, it really becomes a snake, isn't it? In your mind, you, as far as you're concerned, you have seen a snake. And that is the problem of the world. We treat it as a snake, whereas it's nothing but Brahman, nothing but a rope only. Therefore, there is no cause for fear. The cessation of fear refers to the termination of all miseries as a result of self realization. So, the minute self realization comes in, now you see the non duality, and therefore fear is gone. Who is going to upset you, who's going to kill you, who's going to hurt you? It's Brahman everywhere. One concept, body is but a shell, it's just like a tool, it's like the peel of the banana, the real fruit is inside. You see, a person who is born must die, not if he will die, he must die. The only question is, when will that date come? This century, 10 years from now, 2 days from now, few minutes from now? That's for everybody. We all have to go through that. But when the unborn self is realized, death becomes a myth. You start laughing at death. So many births you have had, so many deaths you have gone through. This cycle will continue on and on. So it's like a merry-go-round. And once you know how the game is played, how the trick is working, you simply smile at it. Thus, an aspirant, having discovered his essential nature, brings about the termination of all miseries in the form of fear, death, and rebirth. So, a very profound shlok indeed. With this, we conclude our satsang for today, and we will start from mantra number 3 tomorrow. Hari Om Tat Sat.